Fiorella, what's going on? First of all, thank you everybody so much for tuning into this live stream segment of For the People podcast. Today, like I said, we have an exciting show. We're going to cover an array of topics, but first and foremost, I wanted to have Fiorella talk about her trip to the Donbas region, where she did some
Yes.
reporting. And first of all, I guess, what made you decide to go there, like right now? And is it actually safe to be there? Has the fighting calmed down a bit?
Well, so Niko, this is my second time going there. And it's actually, for me, that's a very small amount because I am in Moscow. So obviously, going there is much easier for me than it is for other people. And I had intended on going there much more, but there was so much going on last year that I really didn't have the chance. I went in January of 2023, and I went to Donbas in the Donetsk Republic, specifically in the Donetsk Republic, the Donetsk city, right after it had been shelled. And we also saw some prisoners that were released. And that was very telling as well, because you can see the faces of these prisoners. And so I wanted to go back
Hold up, you
this
mean
year
Russian or
and see
Ukrainian
how.
prisoners?
No, these Ukrainian prisoners that were
Gotcha.
released to the Russians, to be exact. Yeah, and they, like I said, their faces show so much of what they've have been through. And the other thing that really stuck with me was seeing U.S. weapons and what they have the capacity to do. And so I went back this time to the Lugansk Republic, which had a huge role to play in 2014, because that was one of the first liberated areas back then where a lot of people died, and a lot of people who were just regular civilians took up arms and started fighting these forces that we know are the fascistic forces that are in now the SBU. But back then, of course, it was pretty much painted as, oh, look at these, Russians killing Ukrainians, when in reality, it was the other way around. And we saw, of course, everything that happened with Victoria Nuland, Jeffrey Pyatt, and all those people. And, how long has it been? 10 years later, essentially, we're still seeing these people finally be able to rebuild. But the areas that I visited within the Lugansk Republic in Severodonetsk were not far from the front line until a few months ago. So they really couldn't be rebuilding that much. And so they've just sort of started picking up the pace. And you talk about safety. Actually, a bakery in Lugansk was just bombed like literally like a day ago or so. So it's
Wow.
actually not ever quite safe to be in any of these places. And Donetsk is constantly bombed every weekend, whether it's a market or a residential area. So journalists that
That
do
was
go there
before the war actually
are
started popping
risking.
off, right? That was, I mean, for all intents and purposes, that type of constant engagement in
Yeah.
military assault is the whole part of the reason that the war happened, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly why, because people were living in fear. They were having to hide out. It was an attack on ethnic Russians and ethnic Slavs and people of that descent, including people of Romani ancestry. So the same people that we've seen targeted, of course, during World War II. And so that's kind of what this trip for me highlighted, is that Russia has been fighting the same type of enemy for a very long time. We're going back to World War II, where they fought the Nazis, and they never got the credit under the Soviet Union, of course, that they deserve. And the United States has always tried to take the credit for that, right? And that's just not really the reality. Millions of people lost their lives, including people who were children, 14, 15, 16 years old, going and fighting the Nazis and saying, we don't support what you're doing. And we saw more of that history get told in Lugansk. And then, of course, 2014 brought about more death and destruction for the people of Lugansk. You had people take up arms. You had residents try to flee, and also journalists come under fire. I did get to visit a monument dedicated to two journalists who lost their lives in 2014 in June, when they were actually simply covering the evacuation of residents in Lugansk. And so we saw a lot of that. And now we're seeing it repeat post 2022, when this special operation began for Russia, which has turned into this war against Russia via NATO, this proxy war.
Mm-hmm.
that Ukraine is, is functioning as the non-NATO entity, but essentially, NATO is behind it. And so Russia understands this, Putin understands this, and I think that's why you're not going to see them give in, because they know what happens if they do. They cease to exist, just like in many other places that we see right now, many other conflicts going on in the world.
And I think it's important to distinguish that whenever Russia says that, it's genuine, right? Because in a lot of ways, I know a lot of people think that Russia just has these imperialist ambitions, but it's actually the opposite, in my opinion. It is literally, they have actually had their, I don't want to say their empire, but their country chipped away over the last 70 years, right? And that's including West Ukraine, right? That's West Ukraine. That's a lot of the nations that left after the Soviet Union, and that entire the balkanization of that region effectively was because of the Western Empire, and more specifically NATO, which was created with one sole purpose, right? To destroy Russia. And yet here we are. They said they were going to be done with NATO. It was supposed to only exist in the context of the Soviet Union. There is no more Soviet Union, and NATO is still here. I was going to say perturbando. They're still here bothering and constantly attacking Russia, whether it be economically, militarily, trying to use Ukraine as a proxy, or in this particular case, sending more money to Ukraine to fight a losing effort. Really quick, I wanted to show you this video and get your thoughts on this. Chuck Schumer just announced, actually, that they're about to send some more money, not only to Ukraine, but also to Israel, to the tune of about $118 billion. The Senate has already agreed, and they're already going to move to try to get this passed. Let's take a look.
We're at a turning point in America. This bill is crucial, and history will look back on it and say, did America fail itself? Why is it crucial? Well, if we don't aid Ukraine, Putin will walk all over Ukraine. We will lose the war, and we could be fighting in Eastern Europe in a NATO ally in a few years. Americans won't like that. If we don't help Israel defend itself against Hamas, that perpetual war will go on and on and on. If we don't help humanitarian aid to the starving Palestinians in Gaza, hundreds of thousands could starve. And the border, everyone has said it's chaos. You just saw Speaker Johnson. He said it's chaos. We have to do something legislative a few months ago. But what has happened, in answer to your question, so this is crucial for America. It's a turning point. History is going to look over our shoulders and say, did we rise to the occasion? To his credit, Mitch McConnell did. But too many Republicans, including Speaker Johnson, are just scared to death of Donald Trump. Donald Trump has said he wants chaos. Donald Trump has said, well, wait till I become president. That'll take at least a year. Ukraine could be gone. The border will get much worse. War in the Middle East will get worse, maybe bringing us into it. He's doing it all for political reasons. And let me just say, will senators, the crucial question, the $64,000 question, the majority of Republican senators know this bill is the right thing to do. It's a compromise. I don't like everything in it. Neither does McConnell. But it's a compromise. That's the only way you get things important done in the Senate. We proved that 2 years ago in our bipartisan legislation. And will the senators drown out the political noise from Trump and his minions and do the right thing for America?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and let you address that. What do you think about them sending more money and just the rhetoric used by Schumer there?
Yeah, it's interesting because Schumer got a couple things right. If, sending aid to Palestinians, they're going to starve. They already are starving. They are already in a chaotic, disgusting, and violent situation that totally could have been avoided. But the United States continues sending arms to Ukraine. So him saying we need to send humanitarian aid to Palestinians is just, sweet talk, because behind what he is saying is actually we need to support Israel's continued genocide of Palestinians, and we need to support the genocide of Ukrainians, because that's exactly what's happening. I mean, in terms of the United States and NATO putting them up for fodder, not Russia, because again, Russia never actually wanted to go into this fight with Ukraine.
He keeps using that. He keeps using that same rhetoric, right? That Ukraine is going to be here. They haven't taken any land.
It's already lost. This is what they won't admit. The war is pretty much done. Today, the Russians have advanced towards the major artery of Avdiivka. And this was a very important this will be a very important victory. They're very close because this was a NATO hold. This was a NATO fortress with NATO weapons, and it was basically there
NATO
that
weapons?
since 2014. Yes, absolutely, of course.
Oh,
And
Lord.
NATO and US weapons. It's a NATO fortress. And since 2014, it's essentially been used to attack civilians in Donbas directly, to
Wow.
kill so many people since the beginning of this entire thing. And so Russians capturing that is so significant in so many ways. And obviously, they're not going to admit this, that this is a major pathway that will block Ukraine, that will basically help surround them from all aspects. And so they are not admitting that Ukraine has essentially lost. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, Ukraine is what Israel is to the Middle East. Ukraine is there to simply fortify and act as a contingent for military purposes to go against Russia, the same way Israel is there.
Is that what you mean
To
by the same thing?
yeah, well, yeah, that aspect as well, Niko. But it's also militarily, you have Israel there to go after what the United States interests are in the Middle East, and that's all they're there for. So it's very obvious to anyone who sees it.
Yeah. So two things that I noticed that were pretty clear. You notice when he brought up Palestine and the aid to Palestine, he didn't actually mention the fact that Israel is currently blocking the aid. He's like, you can send as much money as you want to, or send as much aid as you want to. We would have to, of course, know how you plan on getting that aid there, because if you're planning on using Israel to make sure the aid gets there, Israel is claiming to send aid to the affected victims in Palestine. They're like, literally, they're claiming that, but they're not, right? Like, they're blocking it, literally. So there's that. And he's not mentioning that because, well, he doesn't actually, come on, this is Chuck Schumer, guys. He's designed this with dual citizenship. We already know what time it is. But the other thing that I noticed, that he said, we got to send military aid to Ukraine so it can defend itself. We have to send military aid to Israel so we can defend it, so it can defend itself. But Palestine, we'll send some aid. Not going to be military though, right? Like, there's a stark.
Well,
so
and Russia can't defend itself.
They have the right to defend themselves. Israel and Ukraine defend themselves, quote unquote, by being offensive. But Palestine, once again, does not have that same right.
Right. Palestinians will never have that right in their eyes, because they're all terrorists, according to the entire media, and and all of these people who tie Hamas to them. And Hamas is part of one resistance factions. There's so many resistance factions. And again, this is what irritated me today, because I'm sick and tired of seeing the headlines: Israel-Hamas war. It is not an Israel-Hamas war. It is Israel's war against Palestinians. And if you erase the 2.5 million Palestinians, no, it's not. It's a genocide and an ethnic cleansing. But, even if you want to call it a war, it's Israel waging a war on these people, and it's Palestinians. It's not just Hamas. The reason they use Hamas is because they still can tie this idea that they're a terrorist group, and that therefore their lives are meaningless. And the 30,000 plus people that have died or more, because the numbers are probably largely inaccurate that we're getting, they don't count, because they're all terrorists. And so I'm very sick of everybody using that title, Israel-Hamas war. It is not an accurate title. It's insulting.
And what's also frustrating about the thing about Hamas specifically is that you can tell they went for the boogeyman. It was planted the way that they did this. The stories came out. They made sure to mention Hamas, because a lot of these people who are saying Hamas war, Hamas protest, pro-Hamas this, pro-Hamas that, they had zero idea Hamas existed prior to October the 7th, right? You can't, if you do the PLO, if you say PLO, you can't really say that, because then people are going to do research and they're going to figure out the whole history behind that, et cetera, et cetera. Hezbollah is like they've already kind of used that too much. They won't even try. So they had to come up with something new, and they went with this new PR tactic. Let's use Hamas and say that they're terrorists, and that way we can act like everything that is happening now started on October 7th, because y'all didn't know about Hamas until October 7th. And it's frustrating because they immediately try to call Hamas terrorists when it's like, okay, so just for argument's sake, how would you define terrorism? And a lot of them will probably say, I don't know, shooting people from Apache helicopters and killing your own people, right? They were trying to kidnap people. Hamas was trying to kidnap people because they were trying to get their prisoners back, which is a whole different conversation. But Israel literally bombed its own people, and they don't seem to care. They keep talking about these prisoners. Release the hostages. Release the hostages. How about you tell your people to stop bombing the goddamn hostages? How about that, right? Because that probably would be a little bit better so that they can actually be released. Or you could have honored the initial deal for 100% hostage exchange that Hamas presented, and y'all decided to ignore. But go ahead.
Israel doesn't care about, the government of Israel does not care about the hostages, so much so that their own people have realized this and have been protesting them constantly. I did a whole story on this on RT because they actually, back in the day, Israel used to exchange thousands, even up to thousands of Palestinian prisoners that they still have in Israeli jails, by the way, including children. And nobody cries about those children in the media, by the way, but they would exchange them for like 1 or 2 Israeli soldiers. And that would happen, no problem. And nowadays, Israel refuses to do any of this. And they have even said that they don't actually put the prisoners, the hostages' lives in some sort of, number one priority. Their priority is to destroy all of Hamas. And they have said this. And so this is why their people have been protesting them, and they're angry, and they're even like, all right, do a ceasefire, because Hamas has said there will not be more release until there is an actual ceasefire. Now, a lot of people even have different opinions on what a ceasefire means, because does a ceasefire mean Palestinians can't defend themselves? Because again, they are fighting an occupation in which Israel doesn't have international law on its side, because it is an occupation. And so there are so many things that have happened recently that really show us, Niko, that people like Palestinians and people in the global south, largely people of Arab descent and other people, don't have the same rights and the same justice from international law as do their Western counterparts. And that has become very clear from the ICJ ruling, because after that, Israel didn't care. The United States shrugged it off, and they have continued killing Palestinians, and not just in Gaza, by the way, in the West Bank, where there is no Hamas.
Yeah, people keep ignoring that. That's what I was going to say. A ceasefire in Gaza does not necessarily that Israel will stop its aggression in the West Bank, that people, for some reason, are not talking about. And even with the mainstream media, with some people finally coming around on how to cover the Gaza situation correctly and ask the real questions. No one in mainstream media, from what I've seen, has actually asked, so hold up real quick. This happened today in the West Bank where there is no Hamas. And I thought this was a Israel-Hamas war. Why are you killing Palestinian kids in the West Bank? And no one has really asked that question. I want to go ahead and go over some of these super chats really quick. Sparky, thanks for the super chat. One of my brothers spends U.S. winters in Marseille. Oh, really? Smart man. In Brazil, I'm assuming. Make Ukraine Russia again. Yeah, it might be. By the end of this year, it might be. And you know what? It might be the best thing for Ukraine, because the reason that they have all the problem that they have is because it's effectively been ran in one form or another by Nazis or by NATO. And every time that they have a democratically elected leader, he's removed by Nazis or by NATO, or usually both. Sparky, don't even leave a patch named Ukraine. Lest it remain a NATO playground, carpetbagger, money laundry, and becomes a Black Rock property. That's also 100% true.
That's the plan.
Yeah, I was like, that seems to be the plan, right? Like that's it was. Maybe they thought that was. There's a good chance that maybe they did think that was going to happen by the end of this war, and that that Russia would be drained because of it. Like they knew that Russia's victory was inevitable, but they thought that Russia would be drained, but it didn't really work out like that. Russia's probably better off now than they've ever been in history since the Soviet Union. So Fiorella is insightful and real purdy too. Man, don't be telling her that. No. Hamas is the MacGuffin in the Israel-Palestine movie. Who's MacGuffin? Is that a movie reference that I'm missing?
Probably. Maybe Pasta would get that reference, because
I was gonna say this is a pasta question. It's like a pasta super chat. I'm gonna tell you word for it though. So Fee, you actually were the first one to make me privy to the fact that Tucker Carlson is apparently in Russia. Now we don't know why he's there. The Kremlin technically has denied the interview. Technically speaking, I got to be responsible. He technically hasn't confirmed an interview, but just for everybody that's curious, I have been told that there are rumors that it's actually supposed to release February 24th, which would be the anniversary of the war. So, what do you think he's there for? If he ain't for the interview, I think he's there for the interview. But what do you think he's there for? It's not for the interview.
According to my knowledge, he wouldn't come for anything less than an interview with Putin. Tucker would be risking his entire, the
Life?
life to a degree. They can come after him. I mean, he's not really committing a crime, but you know how things are right now with the State Department. They have already threatened him. The DOJ has already threatened him. You have other people here that have come, like Tara Reid, that have said that they can't go back to the United States, and the United States has come after them as well. So I think Tucker is here to really get a good look at Moscow, likely with a Putin interview as well, and perhaps interview other figures, and really kind of show what it's really like here. And in spite of the fact that everyone might disagree with Tucker on certain things, including myself, I think that he at least had people on his show that countered the narrative. And he talked about Julian Assange on his show, or had people that talked about Julian Assange. And he has countered the mainstream narrative on Russia, Ukraine. He can do, more in terms of Israel, Palestine. But the fact that he came here and took a lot of risk to come here is actually something that I think people should say good job, and we should see more of that. The people coming after him for a Putin interview are insane, because that is part of journalism, is interviewing people you like, people you dislike. I've had to interview Zionists. I've had to interview people that I really don't like. And I did it anyway, because that is what you do.
She did it with the stank face, but
you're well, of course, Niko could tell, but other people might have not been able to tell. But but the reality is, you interview all sorts of people all the time, and if you have like a big interview like Putin, you ask them tough questions, and that's all you can do if you're an interviewing, if you're a journalist working as an interviewer, and that's what you do. That's the best thing you want to do. And it has happened so many times with Barbara Walters and with others when they've interviewed adversaries. So the fact that people are going after Tucker for this thing, I think it's hypocritical, but it also just shows how far gone this idea of journalism is in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And journalism is going to the places you report on. That's one of the main things I always talk about. And I admire about a handful of journalists that go and report from war zones, that go to the places that they're talking about. And because that gives you a whole other perspective that you didn't have before. Because you could have talked about Brazil before, Niko. You could have analyzed this and Lula that. And, and we did that, but going there and looking at Brazil and talking to people, you get a different picture and you get to understand everything. And I think that's the best we can hope for as journalists.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's funny that they're coming out this hard against Tucker for interviewing an adversary. I mean, look at this tweet from Bill Kristol. Perhaps we need a total and complete shutdown of Tucker Carlson re-entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what's going on. What the fuck? What do you think he's doing? Like what? Like I'm genuinely curious. First of all, if Tucker Carlson has that kind of power that he can influence Putin in some type of way, we need to know. He's in the wrong job if that's the case. Because but they're making it sound like this man is ex-special forces and he's about to go train the Russian military or some shit. Yeah. Like, what do they mean?
Give him secrets.
Yeah, and if he had secrets, do y'all want to let us know why y'all was giving Tucker Carlson secrets? Right? What does he know? Maybe we should figure that out when on his way back. But even still, I've never seen this type of rhetoric because, like, for example, Larry King interviewed Muammar Gaddafi for CNN. For CNN.
He was also kicked out.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, that was later on. Peter Och. I can't remember his last name. Peter A something. It's Peter something. He interviewed Osama bin Laden. He also worked for CNN. He's like a Pulitzer Prize winner for covering the Vietnam War. He's covered a lot of wars, actually, the Persian Gulf War. He interviewed Osama bin Laden. This was like, if you had the chance back in the day, if you had the chance or the opportunity to interview one of these like global figureheads that are controversial for the West, but also loved and admired by other cultures, and you had the chance to interview them and ask them questions, because it wasn't like like when they talked to Muammar Gaddafi or when he talked to Osama bin Laden, it wasn't like they were asking easy questions, obviously. And we don't know the questions that Tucker's going to ask. But
all the CNN pundits have already interviewed Putin too. Putin has he gave interviews not that long ago. So this is just because they're
the questions
afraid.
though. But the questions are different. That is true.
Well, yeah. The questions
that's what I think scares them. That's what I think. Well, what do you think that Tucker will ask that has him so freaked out?
Well, Tucker's going to ask Putin's opinion on the United States and Biden, and how Russia views the United States. I mean, that's what I would ask. 100%. That's what like. How do you view the United States? Do you think that the United States sees you in this way? What those sorts of questions, like what does Russia really want to gain out of this conflict? These are the types of questions you ask, specifically, of course, because we are in a proxy war. The United States is with Russia via Ukraine. And so obviously that's going to be what he's going to ask about. And again, like, I think when you sit down with somebody like Putin, after, I don't know, Niko, if you've seen some of the speeches, that is what they're afraid of, because Putin says a lot of things that resonate with Americans, with people who have seen through the fake propaganda of the mainstream media, with people who have seen that our politicians are manipulated. Putin already knows all of this. So he's going to reiterate those thoughts to a Western audience, and Tucker has a huge audience. And so therefore, that's what they're afraid about, because we've all been saying these things. But when you have Putin related to Tucker's 2 million plus audience, or however many, 20 million, however many followers he has, that's going to hit different, and it's going to really not benefit the United States. But who does it benefit? It benefits Russia. It benefits Putin to do this interview, because Russia can show their perspective to a wide range of audience. Because as much as, we have our team, as much as we have, all of us here trying to do this work, just with a mainstream figure like Tucker Carlson saying it, it's going to get a lot of eyes.
Yeah. Peter Arnett. Thank you, Sparky. Appreciate you. So I always say to people that Putin is who people think Trump is in a lot of ways. Like, Putin is really Russia first. And but the difference is, in a lot of ways, he shows compassion because, like, for example, this war in Ukraine, like, that shit could have gotten actually ugly. People think it got ugly because of the result, but Russia's military could have done what Israel did, basically, and just from a distance took pop shots at Ukraine and wiped them off the face of the planet, and Ukraine wouldn't have been able to do a damn thing about it, right? Because if they could do something about it, they would have been trying to attack Russia, like the actual Russia. If they had the capability to actually breach their defenses, they would have done so. They couldn't, because it's Russia, right? So there's that. When Putin speaks, he actually had this very good. I would say Assad probably too. He has his ability to speak to Westerners. He knows who his audience is. He's like, I don't need to convince the global South. I don't need to convince Russia. I really don't need to convince the majority of Eastern Europe. I need to convince the West. And so when he speaks in these interviews, oftentimes you can tell he's kind of confirming a lot of the things that a lot of us already know or believed. But in this particular interview, it's different, right? Because when CNN conducts an interview, like I said, questions are going to be different. But when CNN conducts it, it's different when CNN. Nobody really cares about CNN. The reality of the situation is everybody cares about Tucker now. Bro, I mean, to the point where him traveling to Russia is making international news. It's like whenever Dennis Rodman went to North Korea, but bigger. Because Dennis Rodman, I'm not really worried about asking questions. Tucker Carlson, on the other hand, he has the ability to not only ask him about the issues between Russia and the US, which is possible and plausible, but this isn't Tucker who was going to interview Putin, 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago. This is Tucker in a whole different body, basically. This is Tucker who is probably going to ask, well, how do you feel about the U.S. launching an attack on Iran? Do you believe that those soldiers were actually killed? He's going to ask about BRICS. He's going to ask about the U.S.'s involvement potentially in Israel and the Palestine conflict. For all we know, he could be waiting to talk about the Israel-Palestine conflict until this interview because he had it lined up and he wanted to be the first one to really break news of an opinion that Putin has on the situation, because Putin's kind of been a little bit silent about it. He hasn't been cheering on Israel, but he hasn't really talked about it. I'm assuming this because he's had some. I mean, usually I don't really believe in 4D chess when it comes to politicians, but if there was anybody who could probably credibly say that they play 4D chess, I would say Putin is probably the guy. So I think that this interview with Tucker could become viral. It might be the most viral interview in history. It could be. And ironically, it's because he left Fox News that it's probably going to end up being. Because before, I would say, I mean, would you agree? I'm sure you would probably agree when you say that Fox News would have limited what he could have asked him.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't really know what his limits are. I'm sure he has his own limits, but definitely much less limited than with Fox. And I think leaving Fox gives people at least the impression that he is more of an independent thinker and an independent figure. Whether or not that's true, that'll show. But it seems like he's going out of his way to interview figures that are politically, controversial. So in a way, that's really playing more to his point that he's just going to interview whoever he wants. So exactly, we're in a point right now where the United States is trying to start World War III from different points, whether it's from Russia, Ukraine, whether it's from the Red Sea, or Israel, Palestine, and through Iran, of course, blaming everything on Iran. We're seeing the United States potentially try to start nuclear war. And so this is at a crucial time where I think this interview could resonate with many people who don't want that scenario, who are like, wait a minute, don't do that, because who's going to lose out in that? Literally everybody. So Russia doesn't want to go into World War III. And the reason you don't see Putin talking too much about the Israel-Palestine issue, and he has said things, and so has Lavrov, it's because Russia has a relationship with Israel. Russia has a relationship that goes back to the fact that there were lots of Russian Jews and so many things. And so you have entities in Russia that are pro-Israel, but you also have entities in Russia that don't want anything to do with Israel and see it for what it is, as the West's major ally that is sowing an imbalance and chaos in the Middle East. And so they see that. So it is a very difficult situation. Russia has always placed itself as a mediator in the region, but I have said this before, they will have to make a decision when it comes to the point of, beyond diplomacy. Once we reach that point beyond diplomacy, obviously what's happening to Palestinians is a genocide. And I think very few people at this point can deny it and have any sort of moral compass. But in terms of the diplomatic aspect, when you talk about figures, whether it's the Russian foreign minister or whether it's Putin himself, they have to really be careful as to how they frame things and how they say things, because that's just how politics works, whether we like it or not. And I think they're going to have to make a decision, because a lot of people look to Russia. And if Russia doesn't make the right decision, and with all of the global South really mostly standing with Palestinians, it's going to discredit Russia, because, as we just talked about it, Niko, people in the Donbas fighting against fascists and trying to liberate themselves from these fascists is literally what Palestinians have been trying to do for 70 years. And where people just woke up one day and said, oh, Hamas, the same way people woke up in February of 2022 and said, oh my God, we care about Ukraine. It's the same type of thing. And so it would be hypocritical of Russia to not understand that plight.
I'm for the I'm for the next new thing.
Yeah, the current thing. Yeah.
The next current thing. Exactly it. Really quick, I want to go ahead and check out some of the super chats before we move on to this next video, which is crazy. But sometimes you gotta love Trump when he had diarrhea of the mouth. It gives plenty to talk about. Sparky said, thank you again for the super chat, Sparky. He said a MacGuffin is a device used in books or movies in support of the plot, but the device itself isn't important and in and of itself. like a decoder device, which secret agents are looking for. I
Oh,
get it.
okay.
Man.
I vaguely remember that, but I thought he was
Yeah, like
talking
in
about
middle
like
school, man. You like that's like
MacGuffin.
that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nah, I get what you're saying. It's important, but like it's not really the actual device or whatever it is isn't really as important as the device itself. I get what you're saying. Sentient Dreamer, thank you very much for the super chat. Throughout this last 4 years, my political alliances have shifted to those that show their receipts. Dems versus Republicans is bullshit. The duopoly done with lies. Facts. And yeah, Sparky Peter Arnett, thank you very much. Appreciate you. All bad things Putin's been accused of over the last 20 years are faked by or carried out by the CIA and their fellow Five Eyes buddies and associates. Putin's actually a righteous and reasonable man. I mean, that's pretty fair. I mean, yeah, I mean, you could tell that he's, bro. You know what the U.S. does? So the CIA and the intelligence community, they're not really original, right? So what they do is when they accuse somebody of something, they engage in these tropes that they don't realize sound comical. Like, yeah, Putin, he poisoned his average. Like, he poisoned? That's a super specific name. And then you go like look at all the old like movies of Americans' portrayal of Russia and their beef with each other. It's always like the leaders are poisoning each other. You're like, are you for real? That's what we're gonna go with. We're gonna go with poison. Yeah, because they're lazy. They're fucking lazy, and they also expect that most Americans would buy into tropes. But ironically, I was reading once that with Stalin, at first it was he allegedly, had a heart attack, and that's what people believe. But now it's actually alleged that he was killed by the CIA, and specifically they used poison to do so, which would make a lot of sense why they always go back to poison when it comes to somebody being poisoned, or excuse me, somebody being killed in Russia, right? Because like that's what the CIA does. They commit crimes and then they project onto other people. So but no, I 100% agree that at the bare minimum, Putin is far more righteous than any Western leader. I think that's a pretty, like any Western leader in charge of any country. I would even venture to argue that not only is he righteous, because that's important, being righteous is good, but righteousness alone does not help you guide a country into the level of sustained growth and success Russia has had when the entire Western world is out to get you. So more than righteous, he is extremely intelligent and shrewd, extremely. And he's almost to such a degree, like Fiorella said. Do I wish that he said more about the Israel-Palestine situation? Absolutely. But he's also so righteous and shrewd on other causes that you almost forget that he hasn't said anything, because there's like an assumption in the back of your mind when the time comes, Putin make the right decision. Like, because when has he not? That's basically where I'm at with it. So I just, I wish that anybody, literally anybody in our country had the balls that Putin does to challenge the Western Empire. Bricks rules. Yeah, we'll see.
We don't breed those kind of leaders, though. We don't breed those kind of leaders because we haven't gone through what the Russians have gone through. And
Facts.
You're talking about just the Russian Empire going down. You're talking about the rise of the Soviet Union, the fall of the Soviet Union, the 2014 Maidan Revolution. And so they have gone through their share of conflicts and their share of just accusations and sanctions and all these things that we have never gone through in the United States. Therefore, we don't breed the same type of leadership that Russians do. And Russians have a more Eastern type of approach, similar to China, where they don't just attack and show all their cards. They're a lot more, they stand back, look at the situation, they analyze. It's almost annoying to me how diplomatic they've been to the United States, because the United States has shown time and time again they're not your friends. They're not going to like work with you. And Russia has been extremely patient, but I think they have lost that patience, and most recently, and that's been echoed also by Lavrov as well.
Yeah. I think that so yeah, definitely they've been. I know exactly what you mean. I'd be like, man, what the fuck, man, Putin, this motherfucker. Like sometimes that's how it feels, because I feel like Americans specifically are actually hurt a lot of the times because of how diplomatic Putin is with the U.S. I feel like if Putin would, for lack of a better phrase, put his damn dick on the table every now and then, maybe we wouldn't be having these situations. Like with Ukraine, he did, but like look at what happened because Putin finally said, yeah, I'm done. Let's handle this right now. And look at the global shift in power that happened because he put his dick on the table one time. One time. Imagine if he did that in Israel and Palestine. Like literally, it would. I mean, the global markets shifted because of Putin putting his dick on the table once in this Ukraine situation. So if he did that more often, then I mean, we don't know what the world could look like, but that's also that level of restraint that he displays that I admire so much. Because maybe if some of our politicians had that level of restraint and willingness to engage in diplomacy, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. And so, but I also think it's smart on his behalf because he likes playing like he is being defensive and he is being cautious, but he pretends to be more cautious than he actually needs to be. And I feel like that's so that America will let us guard down and mess up. And I mean, look at what happened with Ukraine. They did let their guard down. They showed their hand way too early. They had no idea that Saudi Arabia wasn't going to stop doing business with Russia. They had like their allies, basically either sat out, which is effectively allying with Russia, or ally with Russia outright. They had no idea that was going to happen. They had no idea that Russia had a stockpile of gold stacked up for like 10 years. And so them trying to sanction Russia into oblivion literally didn't work. I remember I was asking some friends in Russia, like, what happened whenever they sanctioned the banks? They're like, oh, we don't know. Only people with American banks actually kind of felt that problem. Russians didn't really experience it. So, but it sounded good on the news. So I have a lot of respect for the way he goes about his business, and people wonder why he stays in power. So I hate when they try to call him a dictator, because that shit, I mean, that's like, you don't know what a dictator is, effectively. It's the dumbest shit. Like, they don't have a legislature, and he doesn't have his people that he has, representatives that he has to answer to. But they call him they do this thing where they try to pretend like the U.S. is more democratic because we force presidents out of office, right? That's a recent phenomenon. It happened with FDR, and it likely happened because they realized, oh shit, this man had 3 terms, and Henry Wallace is about to replace him. And if Henry Wallace was able to replace him, he would have been in the presidency in perpetuity until he passed away, effectively. So they eliminated that problem by creating these 2-term presidencies. But people have to understand that is effectively an American phenomenon, and it is not common.
And it doesn't change the fact that our foreign policy remains the same no matter who's president. So Putin has has actually talked about that himself before, and so has Fidel Castro. So, I mean, if you want to talk about controversial figures calling us out, those are 2 of them.
Exactly. It's like we're just rotating dictators. I don't know why. Like, we pretend like we're better because we have democracy. You got literally a president trying to throw a former president in jail after they literally complained, saying that if Trump were to do this to Hillary, by the way, many of us complained because Trump said he was going to do it, and the motherfucker reneged. So first of all, he should have did it. And he would have been justified in doing so. But they complained when it was one of those situations. It's cool when they do it. It's a problem when I do it. Type of thing. Like, and they are pretending that we have a democracy. You have to sue Fiorella, which I know this could be a whole separate tangent, but Fiorella will tell you have to sue to know whether or not you can even know how the election went. Really, that's you have to sue to audit. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Where did Fiorella? You've been around the world. What other country do that? Do you have to sue in order to know the numbers of your election?
I can't think of one yet that I've been, and we have Russian elections coming up, so that'll be interesting to see just how unfair these elections are in compared to the U.S. Because I know for a fact the U.S. elections are completely, entirely not as the way we say they are, and so I'll leave it at that because we are in YouTube. But the elections in the U.S. are some of the most chaotic that I've ever witnessed, and we're talking about developing countries having proper elections, but the United States can't get it together. Yep. I don't know.
Even in Brazil, for example, actually, by coincidence, Fiorella and Pasta were here covering the Brazilian elections, and they'll tell you, like, they may not always like the result of the election per se, but one of the reasons that it was like that Bolsonaro got in so much trouble immediately following the election is because he was casting down elections where every single person has to vote if you're an adult, and everybody is literally like you have a fingerprint. Like there's almost, I mean, you can, I mean, and they're audited automatically. But like if you wanted to, like you can, but you're gonna get the same fucking result basically because
we asked for a printout of every single polling area where we went, the polling center we went, the polling looked like different polling tables. We asked for a printout and we were able to look at the data that was there. We can't even do that in our own country.
Yeah,
So
no, they'll threaten you.
tells you
Like I got threatened. I got threatened by that I can't remember her name.
My
that
brother
he
got
watched
thrown
the-
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a lot of
Yeah.
trouble, man. Just hey, man, can we know the results of our public and open democracy? Do you want to go to jail? No, get the fuck out. Like that's what happens, basically.
Basically.
I wanted to show this video really quick of something that Trump made everybody privy to very recently, because once again, every now and then Trump had diarrhea of the mouth and reveals something that is pretty noteworthy about the assassination of Soleimani, Iran's former general who the U.S. killed in a different country, violating damn near every international law under the sun.
When we took out Soleimani, Israel was supposed to do it with us. 2 days before the takeout, they said, we can't do it. We can't do it. I said, what? We can't do it. Then I had a certain general who's great. I said, so General, do we do it ourselves? He said, we can, sir. It's up to you. I said, we'll do it. But Israel was a part of it. Bibi was a big part of it. And we had everything planned, everything, because what he has done is terrible. What he did to us was terrible. Killed so many of our soldiers, killed so many people. He's the father of the roadside bomb. You know that, right?
So I want to address that part really quick, and I'm gonna let you handle it. He's not the father of the roadside bomb. I don't know where this lie just came up from. I guess it's like the latest anti-Iran propaganda. You know who the father of the roadside bomb is? The United States of America. The United States of America. They're called. He's referring to IEDs, which is improvised explosive devices. They're improvised explosive devices because we took the explosive that we actually left in countries like Iraq, Afghanistan, other places. And then we taught the terrorist organizations that were working for us how to make them. And then they used them on us whenever, because like Iraq was on our team and then they weren't. And then Al-Qaeda was on our team and then they weren't. And ISIS has always been on our team. And so but that's one of the recent lies. But I want to go back to that part where they just admitted that Israel was about to take part in the assassination of Soleimani, which is, do you believe, first of all, that they didn't at this point?
Yeah, no, I mean, no, obviously Israel and the United States have been salivating for war with Iran. I mean, for a long time. And Israel, of course, like I said, people debate whether Israel controls the US or whether the US controls Israel. I think we're coming to a time in the world where it's not even about nation states anymore. It's about certain people and certain interests that are that cross national borders. So when people talk about Donald Trump being America first, I don't necessarily think that's true. As you pointed out, Niko, I think Putin is a Russia first. I think he's doing everything to help Russians first, beyond everything else, right? While also not trying to start World War III all over the place. But when we talk about America first, what does that mean? It means different things to different people. But I think to some people, it means, well, you put the interests of Americans and you look at, domestically the economy, and you might stop, engaging in wars. That's what it would mean to me. To stop engaging in wars, to start, looking into what can actually help your citizens of the United States so they would actually stop leaving, because so many people are leaving to the global south. They're going to Mexico, to Brazil, to Russia. There's so many Americans coming and being like, oh my gosh, blown away. Yeah, exactly. Raise your hand if you're one of them. My mom visited recently and she was blown away by just
Russia?
how, yeah, she did. She visited Moscow.
That's
yeah. Dope. And she just was like, wow, the metro is amazing. It's a museum. And she was here in winter where
is the metro really like that? Because every person I talk to about Russia,
it really is.
They're literally like, yo, what the hell? This is the best place I've ever been to, in my life. The metro is the shit.
It really is. It's like a museum, really. And they're building more and more train systems. Ours are falling apart in the US. And so you come here and you see these great, restaurants, wonderful malls, and the streets are so clean. Like, and people, from
Very
the
little
US, I
homeless,
mean,
right?
my
I know there's
mom's
homelessness, but it's very little, right?
very little, especially in Moscow. I mean, there is. And I'm not saying Russia's perfect, because obviously they still have to deal with what we all over the world have to deal with. It's oligarchs. And Putin has to deal with them as well. That's a whole other topic. But that's the reality that's facing everybody. But in terms of cleanliness, in terms of public transportation, in terms of universities, in terms of public health, I mean, it is just what we would have liked. And you still see the remnants of the Soviet Union. And one of the things I don't like is the bureaucracy, but this is one of the things that it's like they're still using, like paper and pencil and this sort of thing. So when people talk about Russia becoming, being part of this new world order where they're going to use CBDCs and it's going to be the same as, the WEF, and Putin is just a puppet and he's going along with the whole thing, it's completely baseless, because Russia is still stuck in the bureaucratic aspect of things, that there's no way they're going to be doing that.
So
And
almost
they
almost
are
to a fault to some degree, right?
almost, yeah, absolutely, to a degree. Yeah, it's annoying. But there's also the aspect that they are launching a digital ruble, but the digital ruble isn't tied to the central bank, and they have made that very
What?
clear. So it's this whole
Ooh.
thing that
Well, how
is
do we invest
entirely
in such a
different.
ruble? I'm trying to figure out
And
how to
I've
buy
had
some
to
invest.
explain that to people. Well, you should take a trip to Moscow and go to
I
go to
know I was
RT and
supposed to. I was
all that
supposed to in
stuff.
February actually, but I can't because I got some expectations at the end of the month. So I couldn't
Yeah.
do it, but I'm definitely gonna be going to Russia soon. In the summertime, not in the
Yeah.
wintertime. Hell no. You
Hey,
know me.
my
I ain't
mom
going to.
came in the winter, man, and she's, Florida. She's been in Florida, and she did it, man. It was good. She actually enjoyed it. So
That's dope. That's really dope. So my thing about this study and mission, first of all, once again, we're finding out. And what's weird about that, in my opinion, is I don't know if Trump is trying to deflect blame. Like,
mhm.
what is he doing? I don't, because Trump be doing some stuff
Yeah.
sometimes where you're like, it ain't 3D chess, but it might be 2D. And it sounds like he's like, hey man, look, it wasn't because remember how like he's come out against aggression against Iran, like because he's worried that it could start World War III. And at least
Mhm.
it sounds like a great talking point with Biden because no one wants to escalate with Iran because they know where that's going to lead to. And what it sounds like he's trying to say is, hey man, Israel was supposed to be on this too, man. Since we're gonna talk bad about Israel, yeah, man, they're not even like they didn't even commit, or they did commit. Because I don't Mossad 100%, in my opinion. Where do we get the intelligence that we do get that is somewhat reliable in the region? Almost all of it comes from the Mossad, almost all of it, unless it comes from us because. Like when we know where terrorists are, it's because they worked for us. So of course we know where the fuck. Yeah. That's the only time the U.S. is good at intelligence is because we provided it for ourselves.
Yeah.
They work for us. But I personally, I wouldn't be surprised if the Mossad was involved in assassinating Soleimani. How else is Israel supposed to work in lockstep with terrorist organizations in Syria and other places to combat Iran? Because Soleimani was just so damn good at his job. I mean, the reality of it. And that was a problem for Israel.
And it's just I don't know, Niko. I'm still stuck on the part that we really had our president literally just whack
Yeah.
a leader. I mean, a general. Like I'm just flabbergasted, like how we could just do that and just go on with our lives. Like, okay, this is totally normal. I mean, obviously they had their reasons, but this is like, imagine if somebody did that to us, it wouldn't happen. We would have already
No.
started a war. So this is what I'm saying. The restraint of these people in these countries, whether it's Iran, Russia, China, how many times has China says, you can't do this, you can't do that. The United States continues to push the whole Taiwan situation. And it's almost like, all right, guys, like, I don't really want you guys to bomb the United States, but like, how many red lines are they going to cross? How much are they going to be allowed to push? And you had Trump, who has been, hailed as being less of a
Hawkish. Yeah.
warmonger than Biden, actually kill
But that could have
Soleimani.
been That could have been crazy. That could have been some.
It could
That
have
could have
been
been
so much worse. Yeah.
because Iran. People forget like as much shit, right? As Trump likes to talk, guys, and people really like try to gloss over. This is one of the two things they try to gloss over. The Operation Warp Speed. Like I ain't forget. I did not forget about that. And the way that this situation went down, because I feel like there's like a lot of revisionist history about how that went down. Remember how they were like, yeah, man, we assassinated Soleimani because of X, Y, and Z. Because all of a sudden they're like, oh man, Iran has been killing U.S. soldiers, and it was an imminent attack. Bro, first of all, if Iran was killing U.S. soldiers, y'all would have been went to war if they were really engaging in the systemic engagement of constant and regular conflict with soldiers with U.S. Because otherwise, then you have a whole different problem, right? That's weird that you didn't mention it before. But all of a sudden it became a big deal. So you try to use that to justify assassinating Soleimani. Iran, in turn, said, here's how this is going to go down. We're going to bomb here, 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 and here. You are going to shut the fuck up and not do anything about it. And we dare you to retaliate. Because if you do retaliate, we got missiles pointed at you and you have no idea how they're going to fall and where they're going to fall at. And Trump sat back like this on his thumbs and was like, all right, that's fair. That's not a good deal. We're not going to do anything. And then try to pretend like it was some type of victory. Like, no, like Iran threatened you and you didn't do anything about it. And your whole justification for assassinating Soleimani was what? That he was bombing our facilities and our soldiers. So in other words, Iran flexed and the U.S. effectively, in my opinion, showed, yeah, we're scared. We're talking like this, but there's a reason we didn't engage with Soleimani is a general. The man he was in Iraq at the same time as soldiers were in Iraq. He was in Syria at the same time our soldiers have been illegally occupying Syria. We've had plenty of opportunity to directly engage Soleimani and his forces. So why didn't we do it? Why didn't we? Like, because you're scared? Exactly. That's exactly why. You cannot beat Iran's military in a head-to-head. And what's even scary, so if you're the United States, and let's just say that it is true that they're supporting militias around the regions, and I wouldn't be surprised by that because somebody got to fight ISIS. It ain't like the U.S. is going to since they work for us. Soleimani, Iran effectively, and back then Soleimani, not only do they have their massive, I mean, their military is massive. Military and their massive land, which we really don't have a good topography of. Like, really, we don't really know how big and how strategically advantageous it is for Iran to wage war on their land. We don't know. That's one of the reasons we had. Hey, Saddam, really quick, go test that shit out for us. We're gonna see how that shit goes. Didn't go well. And now you're gonna have if you decide to fight Iran in that region, you don't know where the hell you're gonna be attacked from. You don't know because they got militia everywhere, according to the U.S. And if they got militia everywhere, you're going to have to deal with their militia. You have to deal with Iran. You're going to have to deal with Iraq because Iraq is allied with Iran. You have to deal with Syria because Syria is allied with Iran. You have to deal with other countries that haven't shown their hand yet. But when it comes to Soleimani specifically, and this is, in my opinion, the way that the situation with Saudi Arabia went down after the Ukraine war started off, I feel like that was pretty indicative of of what I'm about to say, which is that Soleimani was assassinated because he was on the way to meet with leader of Saudi Arabia. And I believe that, it was the leader of Iraq at the time was also going to meet, and they were going to broker a deal, an oil deal, a peace deal. They had already met once, and they were going to finalize a deal. And the reason why is because Saudi Arabia knows the only thing more dangerous to being an enemy of the U.S. is being an ally of the U.S. because eventually you're going to come up next. And if if the U.S. could get control over Iran by hook or by crook, Saudi Arabia would be the only competition for the United States when it comes to oil in that particular region. And Saudi Arabia is not fucking stupid. They knew what would come next. So they assassinated Soleimani. But then what do we see whenever the war started? They expected Saudi Arabia to sanction Russia and not work with Russia either, but that's not what happened. They were like, nah, we're going to stay out of this one, homie. Y'all got it. But call us when you're done, though. If you're still around, call us when you're done. That's what I feel like happened. And it doesn't really get discussed enough, but we actually saw like the proof was in the pudding. Saudi Arabia they have not aided in this situation with Israel, and they have not aided in the situation with Ukraine. And there's a reason for that. And the U.S. hasn't punished them either. They're also not aiding in the situation with Yemen, despite Saudi Arabia always being our proxy there.
Yeah. I mean, things have changed for the US. They are no longer holding the upper hand. And it really shows in the relationship with Saudi Arabia. It shows in the formation of BRICS and the strength of that. And you can see that the actions of the United States and the West have brought the Arab or the Muslim world closer together. And there is absolutely no way that you can continue to attack Palestinians. You can continue to attack the Yemeni people who have already been through absolutely everything, and they're actually the ones targeting Israel economically and targeting the West economically, which is where it hurts them the most, to be honest, right? Because in the Red Sea and stopping the shipments in Al-Mandab. And so you see that's really what they're irritated about. So now they're trying to go after Syria, go after Iraq, and go after Lebanon as well, because the United States created Al-Qaeda. They created these radical these rebels that they have actually given guns to, and that they have radicalized themselves,
literally
and
trained,
who have become these terrorists that actually exist. But they call those fighting them, whether it's the Syrian Arab army, or whether it's anybody in the region fighting them, any of the resistance fighting them, they call them the terrorists, because the United States needs these terrorists. They need these fascists, just like they needed the fascists in Ukraine, just like they needed the Nazis during World War II to a degree. They need these radicals, these Al-Qaeda moderate rebels.
They ain't ready to have that conversation yet, Fee. They're not ready to have it.
Oh, damn it!
Right? They needed those, because people don't know while they were while Europe was fighting Nazis, where was the U.S. at? In Africa, protecting assets and resources. People don't know about that. They ain't touched foot in Europe for 2 years after declaring war. It's crazy. Let me cover some of these super chats real quick, and I want to talk about this this article from 2023 from 2023. So Sparky, go answer Allah, fight the power. Fiorella, can I or Niko, U.S. citizens, get an MIR card? What's that?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, we can. What's that?
It's a Russian card that you can get here as a tourist when you come, and you can just go to a bank and get it. And well, you have to have a way to make rubles, right? So let's say you have some American money, you exchange American money somewhere for rubles. You can put those rubles in your card, and then you'll have the rubles, and you can use those soon in Venezuela, in Cuba, and so yeah, you can use them. You can definitely use them in Cuba, because I saw the machine. So you basically put your card in there, and it comes out in Cuban currency, and
it'll convert automatically without the high fee.
Yeah,
that's dope. Trump was tricked by Pompeo into assassinating Soleimani, and now Trump is trying to justify it instead of admitting he been fooled. Yeah, I've actually maintained that theory for years now. Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, does the president actually run the country? I think that we can all agree no.
Yeah.
Does the CIA actually? Hey, Trump. Hey, guy. We've been concocting this plan for months now. We just wanted to make sure it was cool with you before we took him out.
That's not how it works.
If
can you imagine that for Biden?
Yeah, right.
Hey.
Yeah, imagine Joe Biden knowing what's going to happen before it happens. Do you remember Trump's speech after the Soleimani assassination? He just sounded like he was rambling and like was caught totally off guard, is what it sounded like. It was like, I was like, oh shit, he did not know that this happened. He didn't know this was going to happen. And he's been trying to pretend as if he was in control ever since then. It's because he always comes back to it. He always like tries to justify, like, bro, how come you don't justify anything else you've done this much? Right? Like, you didn't justify vetoing that bill that would have effectively ended the arms sales to Saudi Arabia, which they were using to attack Ukraine. I mean, not Ukraine, excuse me, Yemen. How come you don't justify nothing as much as this Soleimani situation, which in my opinion is probably a clear indicator that you actually weren't behind it. But now you have to justify it so you look like you were in control. Because if you don't have if people don't believe you're in control, they're gonna be like, well, then why the hell would I even vote for Trump? Because it seems like you can't really do anything about it.
Right.
Anyway.
That's what people have to get to. They're not in control, guys.
That's basically it. Sparky, despite popularizing the term fake news, Trump still has way too much faith in legacy media. There is some truth to that. Wish he'd watched Niko House, the Duran Convo Couch, the Gray Zone, etc. I think that he'd probably watch some things. He should watch a little bit more Tucker Carlson, to be honest, because I know it's going to be a little bit hard for him to get all the way left over here. You know, this is you know, I guess we're far leftist, even though we're not. People say I'm a centrist, but like what's crazy is like I always say I'm a
You're
Black
a right-wing
Panther
fascist.
yeah, I'm a Fred Hampton leftist, and y'all, some of the policies that Fred Hampton would have supported, y'all would consider him conservative. But you know, when your people have been attacked by the fucking federal government for your entire existence, yeah, you would, I guess.
They would consider the Soviet Union conservative because
True.
the Soviet Union has similar policies, economically leftist, but they weren't really for drugs. They were really, it was a completely different type of leftism that the U.S. considers left or whatever.
Yeah, I would say that Soviet Union was they're very classical. I guess classical liberals. I mean, for lack of a better phrase, like they were very like traditional. I would say they believed in tradition, and part of the and it's almost to. I don't like to judge other cultures, right? Because for the Soviet Union and Russia, tradition worked, right? Their tradition is an actual tradition. Like, what is American tradition, Fiorella? Like, does America if somebody says traditional American values, what the fuck does that mean? Stealing land and pretending like you were the victim. Constant gaslighting.
That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's part of the problem. There's no real sense of identity. So you just go with whatever works. That's part of the problem. Yeah.
Yep. That whatever works is like and it is not really working. That's the crazy part. But you know, enough people are convinced that shit works that where people begin to defend. Like, for example, a lot of people are complaining about the border crisis, right?
Oh God.
And nobody really wants to have this conversation. Because
let's have this conversation.
I don't like the way that Biden is handling the border, because let's just say conservatives are right and he is trucking in and busting in however many thousands. Technically, I guess at that point they wouldn't really be illegal, right? Because that would mean that they were invited here. They might be undocumented, but they wouldn't technically be illegal, which is why they're here. But two, immigrants are being used. If what they're saying is true, immigrants are being used to influence the outcome of an election, and they will inevitably be tossed to the side. They're not going to take anybody's jobs. They might sway the election in one form or another, but that also leads one to believe that if the election went the other way, that something would actually change. So
how would they sway the election?
They believe
they
that
can't vote.
They will be illegally voting, and there are people who believe that they will be illegally voting.
I know, but that's
insane.
It doesn't really
happen like that. Yeah.
It doesn't happen. No. Like
you've
been around Miami. You've been around.
They don't know.
You've been around Miami. You've been in, heavily immigrant filled areas. I've lived in LA, Miami, all over Florida, a bit in New York. Like, guys, these people don't vote. They hide. They hide because they don't have papers, and they literally don't. They can't even have a ticket, let alone any sort of record, which would be a federal. I believe it's a federal, not a misdemeanor. It's a
felony.
A felony to vote if you're not allowed to.
They don't go to anywhere where you got to show your fucking ID, bro. That's basically the moral story.
Yeah, but apart from that,
they gonna incriminate themselves.
But here's the thing with the border thing. Does having an influx of people destabilize the economy? Yeah, but who wants to destabilize the economy? Rich people, oligarchs. Exactly. The United States has literally deported all of our jobs offshores for cheap labor, and they have completely shut down any sort of in-house domestically produced labor because they don't want to pay people the right amount. So that is the problem. And if you have immigrants coming in, so somebody's going to work at a restaurant, somebody's going to do whatever, fruit picking, whatever the hell it is going to destabilize the economy a little bit because it allows people to pay people less wages. So for example, if you could go to a mom and pop, house cleaning service and pay more, you're going to go to Maria, who is undocumented, doesn't have papers, and who you can pay her less. So whose fault is that really? Is it the people's fault who are literally escaping from the countries that we've screwed and that we've the coups that we've done and completely totally destroyed, whether the CIA or the DEA via this so-called war on drugs, whether we've destabilized their economies by removing their democratically elected leaders like we did in Honduras, like we've tried doing in Nicaragua, or whether we've sanctioned them to death like in Venezuela or Libya and started the slave trade, or Cuba, 60-year blockade. So you have people like still trying to come here because they can't literally live, because gasoline prices are off the roof there. They can't import cars that are modern, so they use cars that take like 10 to 15 miles per gallon tops, and they're waiting in line for a day to get gas. And so whose fault is that? Maybe if we stopped, and this is what no one talks about, stopped intervening in countries and stopped overthrowing democratically elected leaders and stopped really acting like the police of the world, we wouldn't have all these freaking immigrants coming in, because they wouldn't have a need to. They would stay in their home where they can speak the language, and
even if they were being
families.
used, they wouldn't. Why? I'm about to fucking leave my country for what? I like my country. I like all the stuff here. I have my family here. Why would they wouldn't be able to be used if they weren't being attacked? And Trump participated in that. Like, people forget, we were all here for Bolivia. That was under his presidency. Yeah. He tried to overthrow. Attempted. Yeah. We all remember Juan Guaido trying to overthrow the government on YouTube, on live. He tried to live stream it. Everybody remembers he was in full screen mode. I remember that shit so vividly. It was the most embarrassing shit I've ever seen in my life. Honestly, he should have been arrested for that. He should have been taken. They should have old style, executed him, beheaded him type. That was embarrassing, y'all. Why did he feel so confident in doing that? Because under Trump's administration, he was pushing it, or he allowed his people to push it. So, and y'all know me, I'm all about giving Trump credit where credit is due, but at the same time, it's like, even with Trump, he'll say some of the right things, which leads me to believe he knows the root causes of these issues. He knows, and yet he panders, which, in my opinion, is partially from ignorance and partially because somebody actually said on Twitter, which is probably true to some degree, for better or for worse, he's a true populist in the sense that he leads his audience, but he also lets his audience take the lead, and that's problematic because his audience a lot of the time is wrong when it comes to issues. So, and maybe, and then it's like, that's why he gets, in my opinion, why he gets Israel so wrong. I don't think that he would let Netanyahu get away with half the shit he got away with, because Netanyahu effectively tries to little bro Trump in a lot of ways. All the leaders here, but Trump too. But because his audience has always been so supportive of Zionists and is largely Zionist, he had to make these grandiose moves of putting the American embassy in Jerusalem and shit like that. So, but if we gotta have these conversations about the root cause of these issues, because it's so important because the information. I know that sounds like pretty cliche, but autonomy of information can literally change the world. If it couldn't, why would you be having Bill Kristol call for Tucker Carlson to be denied access to the U.S.? If he doesn't have a gun, he's not going over there to wage war. He's not a super spy. He's not CIA. He's none of that. He's a Twitter guy now. He's a Twitter guy just like me and Fiorella. Why? Because information is just that important, and that's why it's even more important that it's correctly disseminated, and that it's the right information, that when people like microphones like the one Trump has, when they do speak, that they're speaking the truth. So I want to cover really quick before I let you go, Feek. I know it's getting kind of late over there. I think I'm so horrible with time zones, but I'm pretty sure it's getting kind of late over there, even though you're going to stay up all goddamn night anyway. So that attack on Iran happened a couple of days ago, Iranian facilities, right? And y'all remember that they have been saying over and over and over again that Iran has been that they attacked the soldiers, allegedly it's in Jordan, but kind of in Syria, and also kind of I've heard Yemen, Jordan, Syria, but really I guess it was in Jordan. And they said it was for no reason, right? And they say that we're going to respond by attacking these facilities, right? So this is an article from October 2023, October 27, 2023. U.S. strikes 2 facilities linked to Iranian-backed militias in Syria following series of attacks on U.S. forces in the Middle East. So it says the U.S. carried out airstrikes targeting 2 facilities linked to Iranian, let me zoom this in for you. Oops, wrong side. To Iranian-backed militias in eastern Syria on Thursday, according to a statement from the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, following a series of drone and rocket attacks against U.S. forces in the region. The U.S. assessed that the airstrikes against facilities linked to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and affiliated groups did not result in any casualties, according to a Friday statement from Brigadier General Pat Ryder, the Pentagon press secretary. The strikes carried out by F-15 fighter, by a F-15 fighter jet and a pair of F-16 fighter jets using precision-guided munitions, whatever for that means, targeted a weapon and ammunition storage facility in Abu Kamal near the border between Syria and Iraq. The strikes destroyed the facilities, according to Ryder. So, Fiorella, out of curiosity, so this is 2023. How is this? They told us that they were attacking Iranian facilities in other countries because of what happened a week ago, allegedly. So how they go back to October 27, 2023 to retaliate? Out of curiosity.
Yeah, no, I mean, this, again, Niko, they say it's Iranian-backed militias in Syria, but is it really Iranian-backed militias in Syria, or is it Syrians trying to literally destroy the terrorist groups and that the U.S. helped create? We're talking about the White Helmets. We're talking about al-Nusra, right? And then when Syria is trying to defend itself and trying to push out these forces that have been working, according to all accounts and according to great journalists that actually live in Syria, the United States is continuing to work with these entities that are completely terrorist entities. So they're trying to get rid of them because, as you mentioned earlier, somebody has to. And in doing so, the United States is saying that they're attacking the U.S. First of all, this is a very obvious question, right? We always ask, what the hell are we doing in Syria?
First of all, in Jordan, for that matter.
First of all, what are we doing though? And again, and it's mostly up until this point, it's mostly been in Syria, because if the United States admits that it's Syria and not Jordan, they don't have a defense, because again, why are we in these places in general? But we're also, but again, this is the same thing that we did before, if you recall, before we went to war in Afghanistan and war in Iraq. We literally did the same thing. We involved countries that had nothing to do with it. And
right. It's
that's the reality again.
Jordan and Syria, because like I'm sure for some people, I know a lot of people, that's the first time they've ever heard about the country Jordan. Like in a political sense. They were like, huh?
Yeah.
They're like, oh man, it's right about Syria. Oh, I know Syria. I know that one. But Jordan, what's Jordan? Yeah, exactly. It's our little prop out there that nobody really pays attention to, because we installed that leader too. It's a lot of for those of you who don't know, Jordan's 90% Palestinian. And a lot of Palestinians that had money moved there. And a lot of Palestinians that live there are actually wealthy, but they're living under a pro-U.S. pro-U.S. royalty. Effectively, he can't be overthrown or voted out, and that's probably by design. Because the U.S. loves democracies in the Middle East, right? We love democracy so much that we only protect those that are not democratic. It's just super coincidental. Super coincidental, I know. I find it funny that what we have learned, because according to the U.S. news and according to the U.S. military, the U.S. has been attacking Iranian militias and facilities in other countries, and according to them, vice versa. Why are they making such a big deal about it right now, though?
Right.
Why? Because if this was such a big deal, it would have been wall-to-wall coverage. Now, we talked about it briefly. I think I even remember you tweeting about it. But I saw the usuals bringing it up, like, hey, why is the U.S. attacking Iranian facilities without proof? Because they claim that these facilities are bad, and once again, as the story covered, it was in Syria. This was actually in Syria, but no one really. It wasn't news. It made the news, but it wasn't news. Iran was attacking allegedly Iranian-backed forces in Syria and Lebanon, allegedly. Not Iran, excuse me, Israel. Did I say Israel? Israel was talking Iranian-backed forces in both Syria and Lebanon. This was in October and November, and no one talked about it. But for some reason, it's like we're being gaslighted into believing now it's a big deal, and they keep doing the soldier thing. They killed three of our soldiers.
They retaliated. So again, the United States and Israel can attack anybody at any time without any sort of accountability. But the moment they get retaliated by these countries, right? These countries are like, "What are you doing? Stop attacking us." Then it's news, and then it's like, "Oh, look what they did to us." It's like the kid that goes and hits you, and then you hit them back, and then they're like, "Oh my God, look, you hit me." That's exactly what we are.
Yeah, Fiorella's met my babies. So Nala and Bebe, right? When Bebe first moved in, so Nala's my daddy's girl. Most of y'all know Nala. She's my daddy's girl. Her mom was the only other girl in the house. That's her mama, so she let her live. Bebe was the first girl that I rescued while having another girl cat that is just like the biggest daddy's girl you could ever meet. So, but Bebe's kind of a bitch. I love Bebe. She's a queen, but she's kind of a bitch. And sometimes she be starting stuff, but she mostly likes to hang out by herself. But if somebody bothers her, she tends to want to fight. Now, every morning, what was happening was her and Nala were getting into it. And the whole time, I thought it was Bebe starting it because Nala would run to me. And Nala doesn't start anything with anybody. So Nala would run to me and start whining like, "Oh my God, why would she do this?" And I'm like, "Oh, my poor Bebe. Bebe, stop." Right? So one morning, I got up and I just wanted to see what was going to happen. And I didn't move out of my bed. I just kind of opened my eyes like this. And I was like, "What the hell is Nala doing?" And Nala runs under the couch. She runs under the bed and just starts swinging at Bebe. And then when I'm like, "Nala," she runs over and does the same shit that she yelled, "Oh my God, I can't believe Bebe hit me." That is literally the United States. That's literally you. That's a true story. That really, she when she got caught, she's like, "Shit, well, I can't do that no more." But and she stopped doing it after that because I caught her. But that's the U.S. The U.S. They're not supposed to be there. Yeah. They're not supposed to be in Syria. They're really not supposed to be in fucking Iraq. I don't know how they're going to attack. Could you imagine? People are like, "Yeah, man, we're tired of the U.S. attacking us. So what we're going to do is we're going to attack some U.S. facilities in Florida, in New Jersey, in Maryland, in California, and the U.S. is supposed to be cool with it." It's unheard of. It's literally people will lose their shit. Well, what's it? Why? Because it's a bunch of white people in a Judeo-Christian Western society with values. The rules-based order somehow. That's a whole different conversation. But I just hate this idea that somehow Western society is some more dignified and civilized than the global South. Y'all have everybody knows that the fucking Catholic Church is full of boy diddlers. And y'all act just casual about the shit.
And if it's not the Catholic Church, it's one of those sects or one of the Baptist churches and the Bible Belt. All these people, they're all like, yeah. But it's the Muslims. It's the Muslims.
It's the Muslims. They're like, man, they're just crazy and violent. That's just how it's always been. You mean how y'all always just been running up in their crib and shooting them? Y'all literally just go in there, kill hundreds of thousands of people. And just, all right, so we didn't find the guy we were looking for. Our bad. But they're the violent ones. That's just how it's always been. They keep talking about Muhammad.
We saw, he died.
Yeah, right, exactly. They keep talking about Muhammad. Bro, I'm not even religious, but y'all really gonna talk about Muhammad when y'all Vatican? Come on, guys. Come on. And what's the difference is how everyone knows the secret. This because it's not a secret, right? Everyone knows it, and y'all just cool with it. But they're the weirdos. Everyone knows they're the widows because they're weirdos because they want to cover themselves and not like, yeah, they choose to do that, and that's their prerogative and their culture. But like, we also have conversations about like this girl was like, man, there's not a guy. I just literally saw a video before I came on here where a girl was complaining. She's like, guys, it doesn't matter if you're taking care of yourself, if you're earning all the money, you're da-da-da-da. As a woman, you can't approach your boyfriend and say, I just can't stop fucking guys. Like, you can't just say, I want it because you to be promiscuous. Like, what? That's the norm? Come on, guys. Come on. Like, we shouldn't be judging anybody, basically, is what I'm saying. But what frustrates me is that logic and that justification is what's used for them to tolerate the violence. It's what's used to generate the apathy that we've seen for the violence that these people constantly experience. We've seen it being used in this Israel-Palestine situation. We've seen it being used in the apathy about the Congo, Somalia, Libya at one point,
Yemen,
Nigeria,
Haiti.
Haiti. Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, they're inherently more violent. That's why it's okay. They're used to this.
It's a coincidence that these people are all non-Western Caucasian people. It's just coincidental.
Yeah. It's so frustrating, bro. It is so fucking frustrating because I just gotta like, and when people say it, they just say it like so matter of factly about the shit. Like, yeah. Oh my God, look at them. They're so violent. Like, you live in a country where y'all just went up to Iraq and Afghanistan. Everybody knew y'all didn't belong there. Everybody knew it. The whole society, the whole every country that falls under that umbrella of what do they call it? Rules-based order. All of them knew you weren't supposed to belong there. That y'all didn't belong there, and y'all killed hundreds of thousands of people and just not even walked out. Y'all still there, but y'all killed hundreds of thousands of people and no one is hanging for it. But
that's why Israel gets to do what they're doing, right? Because the U.S. has set that standard of being able to do that themselves. So of course Israel's going to do it because they're protected by Israel. And you see why the international law of the international rules-based order and the international community doesn't do shit for these people, because it never has. It's institutionalized by the West. So how could it possibly have an effect?
Facts. Let me read some of these super chats and I'm gonna get you on up out of here. Spark A, thanks once again for the super chat. Despite popularizing the term, oh no, I already read that one. Also, by the way, Trump popularized it, but like that wasn't Trump's term. That was actually leftist term. And funny enough, it was actually for us calling out the fake news against Bernie Sanders at the time. Now, he's full of shit, so it was fake in more than one way. But Trump actually took that from leftists, funny enough, and then like his base used it, and because leftists can't keep shit because they can't keep it together. So Sparky, he said, of course, Garland Nixon referring to the media that Trump needs to be watched. Absolutely, even though RIP to Garland's Twitter account, which is in the weirdest limbo I think we have ever seen.
I can't even believe that.
Yeah, but Elon Musk, free speech, absolutist, that guy. You know that he was pushing for the carbon tax the other day on Twitter. I can't imagine why he would do that. It's not like he would completely and totally benefit from that. Yeah, the free speech absolutist that's going to make sure that people get signed. I don't know if y'all have noticed, if you're on X, have y'all noticed that since basically the start of the new year, when everybody came back to work, anything that's basically pro-Palestine has been throttled, like completely? Like,
unless you're part of like Elon's chosen few that can tweet about Israel-Palestine. But if you're not, then it's been throttled. Yeah.
If pro-Israel, of course, you can, pro-Israel, of course. But even those who have like really popular accounts that generally get, certain numbers after you've been doing this a while enough, you kind of know what numbers people get organically anyway. So you're seeing like even those channels or those profiles, their numbers are getting throttled. They might be doing pretty well, and you might see one tweet that might go kind of viral, but like the likes and the retweets are not actually matching up with the impressions that they would normally get for that type of tweet. Because like you talking about people, I saw somebody got 5,000 tweets the other day. They only had 70,000 impressions. How is that even how you get 5,000 likes and like 3,000 retweets and get 70,000 impressions? It's not how that works, in case y'all were curious. If you get 5,000, you generally close about 400,000 or 500,000 impressions. Fiorella's shadow banned. I'm shadow banned. I don't even know when the hell that happened. But why is shadow banning even a thing on this new free speech Twitter? So anyway, shout out to Garland, man. That's just crazy. Like, I've never seen anything like that. If y'all don't know, Garland Nixon has a Twitter account. He just can't access it, and no one will respond to him. So why he can't? He at first, and what's crazy is he got his account suspended for making a joke about U.S. foreign policy, and they let him back. And then, like, a few days later, he was just not able to access his account. So, yeah, that's free speech for you. The Willie Bragg Show, Dirtbag Leftist. It's time to reject to corporate media and duopoly. Oh, the corporate media and duopoly once and for all. Free Assange, free Palestine, free healthcare for all, and free speech. Amen, brother. And shout out to Sparky one more time. Hearing about Niko's household reminds me of when Pasta was exerting his white privileges around Niko's house. I was afraid Pasta would exert his white privileges from his Nah, man, my mother's house don't like white privilege. So that's funny. How do you know about that? Spark, you been in my crib? I don't remember that conversation. But I mean, it's a true thing. We always use Pasta for his white privilege, though. I mean, it's kind of like our thing, right? It's like he's okay with it. He understands what it means.
It's the least he can do,
It's literally right. It's the least he can do, right? Like,
but he's not full white. He's Italian, so he's less white according to him.
He's white. What do you say? I'm white passing. I'm just white. Man, only positive walk around Brazil speaking the most horrible
Spanish
and Portuguese, and like no one's offended by it because like, man, he's just so white, man. Just let him like he's trying, man. He's trying, man. You know what's funny? Before I let you get up out of here, I was in an Uber the other day, and this motherfucker, he was like, "Where are you from?" I was like, "Why?" Like, well, he's like, "Where does your accent come from?" But he asked me in Portuguese. I'm like, "What do you mean? What does my accent sound like?" He was like, "You're not from Rio." I was like, "No, I'm not." He was like, "Are you from like Mozambique or like a country like that?" I'm like, "Why Mozambique?" And he was like, "Oh no, like it's just your accent." I'm like, "No, I'm American." He's like, "You're American?" I was like, "Yeah, why can't I be American?" He's like, "Oh, I just thought you were from like there." So the place where all the black people are at. And, yeah, I know, even though I don't look like I'm Mozambique at all, but the reason why is because there are no black people here that are American and speak Portuguese. So
yeah.
he was just like, and when I'm speaking here, I speak with an accent because when you learn a language, you're supposed to learn an accent. But
yeah,
I don't have specifically a real accent. There's so many, to be fair to him too, when people aren't from Rio and they're from like one of the interior country or states, they all have very unique accents because everybody's so isolated. It's not everybody goes to Rio or goes to Sao Paulo or goes to Bahia, but even if you fly, you have to drive like 6-7 hours to get to most of the cities and states and other states.
Yeah.
So like that's why he was like thought I was from some random state or from Mozambique. And I was like, bro, did you just try to call me African? Like you couldn't have said another state. That was crazy. But when I don't speak fluently, people get upset. They're like, why can't you understand me? I'm like, bro, I'm not fucking Brazilian. But if Pasta does it, he's white, man. It's cool. Like it's fine.
Does anybody think you are Brazilian?
Everybody thinks
because there's a lot of mulattoes and
everybody. Oh no, it was a problem when I first got here because I didn't speak it to Rio specifically. I didn't understand it as fluently because of all the accent differences and the slang. And when I arrived, people would immediately spark conversation. So I would try to go out of my way to not respond to the first statement in Portuguese. But the moment that they figure out that I can even understand them a little bit, it was, I'm like, whoa, calm down, bro. I can't understand. They're like, oh, you're not Portuguese? Are you not Brazilian? I'm like, no, I'm not Brazilian. But you look Brazilian. I know, but I'm not. Are you sure? I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny as hell. It's so funny, man. Like I've never been, but I'm gonna tell you though, it's cool. It's cool because like for the first time in my life, basically. So living in the South, I'm not what you would call, what I affectionately refer to as family reunion Black. There are different Blacks within the Black community. And the family reunion Black is like the ones who they can trace their generations back to what grandparents were slaves, and they got family reunions every single year, and they got thousands of people at the family or hundreds of people at the family reunion. No, that ain't it. I'm like diaspora Black, but even that, like I'm part of the one particular group of diaspora that totally assimilated because they didn't want anyone else from the West Indies to know that they were there, because Barbados specifically had they were the Muslims from Bangladesh that moved to the West Indies, which is why they moved to the farthest island away from like Trinidad and Grenada and all that shit. They moved away from them because the most of them that came from India that settled in Trinidad, they were all Hindu, and the ones that moved to the States were also from a Hindu background. And then so whenever the people from Barbados that also kind of were from the Desi background, but of Muslim descent. So if you were from Barbados, they knew like you're not Indian, you're the others. Like they assimilated when they got here. So like they got rid of their accents, or if they did, they acted like they didn't. They acted like they were from one of the other islands. And so a lot of us that ended up as part of the diaspora for that shit have zero culture, and we look weird. We look different. Like a lot of Barbadians that assimilated ended up in Hollywood actually because they're Black enough to be considered Black, as we are. But at the same time, you have features that are unique in what they would call soft features, quote unquote, that you're also marketable to white people. So like Cuba Gooding Jr., for example, is Bayesian. LL Cool J is Bayesian. DJ Grandmaster Flash is Bayesian. A$AP Rocky is actually Bayesian, which is why he has like such weird bone structure for being such a dark-skinned guy. And his hair texture is different. Rihanna obviously is Bayesian. Will Smith supposedly is Bayesian. So is Making Good. It's like they knew. Like, yeah, man, we're going to go ahead and take advantage of this assimilation thing. So when I came to Brazil, it's not weird to be a weird kind of Black. It's actually the norm to be a weird kind of Black because of the mixture of the Arabic, Portuguese, and indigenous with the Africans. Everybody, for the most part, it's very rare that you find somebody who is straight of African descent, even though most people have African descent. It's like it's the second largest country in the world of people with African descent. It's Nigeria and then Brazil. So it was really interesting to come here because for the first time when I'm walking around, I actually I'm not really being looked at. Not like for being Black. I'm being looked at, but for other reasons. But cause I'm like tall for Brazilian. Like Brazilians aren't really tall. But I'm like walking around and people are just like, hey, nobody like backs up in the elevator when I get into the elevator with them. or like there are some people, even if they're not bothering you, they're hyper aware of you being Black when you're in the room. Like it's just a thing. But that's not a thing here. So I actually get to live my life in peace without the hyper anxiety that comes from consciously being aware that other people are aware of my Blackness. Even other Black people being aware. Because of Black people, whenever we see each other in the room, we're like, it's actually a meme about this. I remember on Instagram once. We're like trying to figure out what kind of Black that person is. It's like, what Black are you? Are you family reunion Black? Are you Caribbean Black? Are you African Black? Are you Latino Black? You know, because I'm not Black, I'm Dominican. Like, you know, that type of Black. So yeah, so it was dope actually whenever everybody kept thinking I was Brazilian, because I'm like, shit, this is really convenient. I can actually just chill, right? So it's been pretty cool, man. Do people think you're Russian? Because like I could see that actually.
Yeah, people just talk to me in Russian sometimes, and some people are like, "Where are you from?" They can't really tell where I'm from. So
probably Eastern
some
Europe.
people think I'm some Arab as well. I get it all.
I can easily see that. Yeah. Well, the Peruvian thing, I can easily see. Yeah, for sure. So, Fee, you started a new channel. What is it called? Where can I find you?
So you can find me, search Fiorella Isabel or Fiorella in Moscow. It's my new YouTube channel, and I'm obviously on RT. I'll be there Saturday in the news for the news hour, and then I'm just always working on things. I'm also writing as well, and also I will be putting up some footage from this trip to Lugansk with some interviews I did. So look out for that as well. And obviously, we're going to be on the combo couch as well tomorrow. Oh, and I will be on Garland's show in like an hour and 2 hours, almost 2 hours, a little less than 2 hours. The critical hour with Garland.
What time is it in Russia?
It's 9:45 p.m. So yeah, that's the last interview I'll be doing.
Yeah,
it's been a long day.
She does not sleep.
No, I do. I do.
It's like 2-hour increments.
No,
You can, y'all. For those of you who are
better.
in Fiorella's Telegram channel, y'all know this mother. She don't sleep at all. Like, how you tweeting and putting shit in Telegram at all hours of the day, Fiorella? It's not possible.
Secret.
I don't know how you do it and somehow still manage to get your makeup done. Doesn't really make any sense. So I put the link for Fiorella's show in the live chat. I'm also going to put it in the description. So y'all make sure y'all go there when you get a chance. Make sure y'all like this video. And of course, make sure y'all share this video. If you want to help the show and donate to the show, you can become a patron on Patreon. You can donate super chats, which a lot of you did. I appreciate. You can become a Rockfin Premium subscriber, or you can donate directly to my Bitcoin wallet. That's also there. And I also have my PayPal down there listed as well. Make sure y'all follow us on Twitter and go there and retweet and retweet and retweet and share and retweet, because, you know, we're shadow banned. So that would help out a lot. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, always remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.
Bye.